Hello, John. Right.
Right.
Here we are in Scotland, and it's a beautiful day, and this is the Loch Knows. It's well known, but we don't know where we are.
Somewhere in Scotland, way up in the Highlands. Absolutely beautiful day. Lovely scenery. Beautiful roads.
Hi there folks, it's Big John here. Now today I want to share with you the highlights of a great and eventful biking trip riding the best part of the North Coast 500 down the west coast of Scotland. 6 nights away, 7 days of riding. Our route took us on some great roads up through the Cairngorms National Park, then north across to the far northwest tip of Scotland at Durness, and from there riding the North Coast 500 all the way down the western coast to the Isle of Skye. It was the first week of September 23. We had fantastic weather, great roads and scenery, enjoyed lots of good beer and the odd single malt whisky, and we got to learn about the legend of Saucy Mary, but more about that later. 4 of us set out, Stu, Steve, Rob and myself, but on only day 1, Rob's 2005 BMW K1200S started to play up. He had to leave us on day 2 to try and get it fixed. And he managed to rejoin us in Skye at the end of day 4, riding a shiny new motorcycle, but having missed all of the NC500. More about that later. Our first night was spent in Bishop Auckland, County Durham, and on day 2 our route took us across the North Pennines. We then stopped for coffee at the last cafe in England, very good homemade cakes by the way. Then up through the Scottish borders we skirted Edinburgh and then into the beautiful Cairngorms National Park, stopping briefly at the newly renovated Braemar Castle before making our way to our hotel at Grandtown-on-Spey. On day 3, we rode up to Inverness and then on the A9 part of the North Coast 500, north to Tain, where we turned inland aiming for Lairg and then picked up the A836 north to Tongue, which is right at the top of Scotland. This part of the A836 is 40 miles of single-track road with passing places through some very barren and rugged terrain. It seemed to go on forever until it finally becomes part of the NC500 at Tongue. After lunch, we took the NC500 west on the A838 and followed it all the way down the western coast to our overnight stop in Ullapool on the coast. This upper part of the NC500 is a mix of 2-lane and single-lane road with beautiful rugged scenery, much of it with excellent views of the ocean and some lovely sandy beaches. Traffic is fairly light, but we did come across the inevitable camper vans and the odd towed caravan. Now, most drivers were sensible enough to pull over and wave 3 bikers past them, but some didn't want to share the road and needed to be bullied into letting us by. stopped for a short break and to admire the vista over the loch and out to sea on this section of the NC500 coastline. Our next stop would be at the famous Carlskew Bridge just before Ullapool. Some say that the Carlskew Bridge is the most beautiful bridge in Scotland. It was built in the early 1980s to replace a small car ferry that previously was the only means of crossing the Narrows at the entrance to Loch Glendu. It's a good place to stop, great views over the loch and out to sea, and of course lots of other bikers to chat with. After dinner in our hotel, we Googled to find a nearby pub serving real ale. There were two options, and we chose the Arch down by the harbour. This turned out to be a great choice. Not only was the beer good, but we had picked a night of live music with Ruaraidh Maclean, a well-known local performer, singing and playing his accordion, which was linked to a synthesizer. This combination, fueled with several shots of whiskey, enabled Ruaraidh to provide his quite unique form of entertainment, which made for a great night out. On day 4, we set off to ride the last leg of our NC500 trip and tackle some of the narrowest and most challenging stretches yet, culminating in the Pass of the Cattle, or in Scottish Gaelic, Bealach na Bar. We would end the day on the island of Skye and keep our date with Saucy Mary. we would also be reunited with Rob, our fourth member. I have to say that some of that last narrow stretch was a right pain. Definitely time to stop for a water break. Now, as we were taking in the surroundings, a young stag appeared nearby. Now, Stuart fearlessly approached it as near as he dared and got a couple of close-up shots. Isn't it great to be at one with nature? We stopped for lunch at the famous Applecross Inn, which is on the north side of the Pass of the Cattle. This would be our last stretch of the NC500 before our date for the night with Saucy Mary on the Isle of Skye. Now, I had led the ride up until now, but the concentration needed to navigate the miles and miles of narrow coastal road and deal with all the hazards along the way had given me a headache, so it was Steve's turn to take over and I would sit at the back. Now, this narrow strip of tarmac runs for 11 miles and rises to 2,000 feet with great views at the top. The last section is a downhill set of hairpin bends, definitely no caravans allowed. The pass is well promoted in tourist guides, and it does therefore attract more than its fair share of camper vans and cars. And it wasn't long before we met up with both. Now, thankfully, most drivers are happy to let us pass, but things do definitely get tricky depending on where you meet the oncoming traffic, as you will see. We stopped at the top of the pass, and Stu decided it was time to fly his drone and take a look at the view from a different angle. Now, when I was planning this trip, the biggest challenge was finding reasonably priced hotels with 2 twin rooms available and a location that fitted with the intended route. Not an easy task, as it turned out, at short notice in early September. The only way I could make it all work on our 4th night was to book Saucy Mary's hostel just over the bridge on Skye. The accommodation available was a family room with 3 bunk beds, with a private bathroom down the corridor, and a sea view. Great price, £180 for the night. Well, the boys did say they wanted an adventure. Now, we've done the Portsmouth-Bilbao crossing many times with Brittany Ferries. 4 guys in a very small cabin, so 4 in a 6-bunk, relatively large room with sea view was a doddle. The challenge, of course, was remembering in the middle of the night to take the key for the bathroom down the corridor and to leave the door of our room on the latch to get back in. So who was Saucy Mary, you want to know? Well, she was married to a Mackinnon clan chief. It's said that she controlled the narrow strait between Kyleakin and Kyle of Lochash by hanging a chain from her home, Castle Mail, to the mainland and charged a toll for ships wishing to pass. If the sailors refused to pay, they had to take the longer, more dangerous route around. If they paid the toll, they were able to continue their journey in safe, calm waters, and, as the story goes, Princess Mary then flashed her breasts at the sailors, and this is how she got the name Saucy Mary. When we arrived, Rob was already there, having turned up on a brand new BMW RT 1250, loaned by BMW Motorrad in Shipley, Yorkshire. Why did he have this? Well, to cut a very long story short, he'd taken his broken K1200S to them to see if they could fix it, and while the mechanics were checking it over, he noticed a very nice used K1300S in the showroom. The report on his bike was bad, a list of issues as long as your arm, and they actually said it was dangerous to ride. So, opportunity time. He bought the 1300S and they took his bike in part exchange. Result? Unfortunately not. On his way to join us, the 1300S lost all its oil from the final drive all over his rear tyre, leaving him stranded. Bad luck or what? Now, to give BMW their due, they came out and delivered him the RT as a loan bike and took his new bike away to fix it. And we would pick it up on the last day as we rode home. The RT wasn't really Rob's style of bike, but it did give him the opportunity to ride over and join up with us all again at Saucy Mary's and enjoy a night of male bonding in our palatial 6-berth sea view room.
Look at that sky.
Pissed up in the pub with a load of music, actually.
Oh, it was
I don't think you were missing me at all.
bloody good.
Yeah, it sounds
We did miss you.
Yeah. I think you didn't.
Oh.
In the morning, it was day 5, and we would ride to our last night in Scotland at Hoyk in the Borders. On the way, we made a couple of interesting stops. The first at Castle Lane, Donnan, not far from Skye, very picturesque and originally built in the 13th century to protect the area from the marauding Vikings. Our second stop was a tea break at the famous biking cafe, the Bikers Cove, at South Queensferry, just beside the old Forth Road Bridge. The hotel that night was a country house hotel in its own grounds, all very posh after our previous night slumming it at Mary's. On day 6, we made our way back through the North Pennines and Yorkshire Dales to our hotel and last night in Ilkley. We finished off in style with a night of real ale and curry, and it was a lovely warm evening, and the pub garden was packed apart from one bench with only one guy sitting there. We joined Knobhead Tim, but that's another story. The next day we called in at BMW Motorrad in Shipley to pick up Rob's 1300S, which by now had a brand new rear drive assembly fitted free of charge. Nice looking bike. So, all's well that ends well. Hopefully. It's been a great trip with fantastic weather and my first to Scotland without any rain. Steve didn't even need to wear his midge net, but he did anyway. And we even rode home down the A1 on one of the hottest days of the year. So thanks for watching. Ride safe. And my next video will cover our big trip of 2024 to Corsica. So stay tuned.